Hello, and welcome to EPR with your favorite environmental nerds, Nic and Laura. On today's episode, Nic and I discuss my adventures in Puerto Rico. We talk to Juan Rovalo about Urban Land Institute, biodiversity, and biomimicry. And finally, in honor of Juan's very amusing story about crabs, here are some fun facts about crabs. Totally lost my place. Oh. Okay. And finally, in honor of Juan's very amusing story about crabs, here are some fun facts about crabs. The smallest crab is the pea crab, which is about a half an inch in diameter. And comparably, the Japanese spider crab is the world's largest, up to 13 feet?
Yeah, I checked. 13 feet across.
Okay.
Its head is bigger than your head.
I will be
like
going to take pictures after this.
It's a nightmare.
Yeah. It is the stuff of nightmares, and no one will be traveling to the depths of the ocean to find them. I don't know. I got to look on the internet, though.
It's from a horror movie.
Say that again.
It's from a horror movie. It's absolutely from a horror movie. It is like somebody was like designed it to be the scariest thing you've ever seen.
Yeah. Have you ever seen that little crab? I forget what it's called. It looks like it's wearing a little hat.
No.
I will have to find this for you.
Crab with a hat. I'm looking it up.
Yes. Last but not least, a group of crabs is called a cast.
Cast of crabs.
Yeah, because they wear hats and stuff. Hit that music.
We are working with Sierra Talaferro over at the Green Obsidian to highlight a few of the individuals that she is highlighting for our Black History Month. Today, we want to introduce you to Nelson Holland, who is a New York native and now a full-blown Colorado hiker and TikTok sensation who's known for his account at Fat Black and Getting It to start sharing his hiking journey experiences with others to hopefully connect to a larger community of similar people with common interests that also advocate for more inclusive outdoors. Check him out on TikTok. Don't forget to check out Sierra's Green Obsidian on Facebook or LinkedIn.
You are not off the hook for the 30-second comedy sponsor spot.
Okay. Give me the timer. Let me go. Yep. Let me know when you're ready.
Ready, go.
Okay, guys, are you tired of being outdoors and wishing you could be inside? Don't worry. The new indoors is indoors you can take outside. It's great. It's wonderful. It's got this nice, soft, very thin layer at the bottom that it's almost like you're sleeping exactly on the ground because you are. It's got this, this nice thing you're gonna tie it to the ground, and it's got this zip thing to stop people from, from mosquitoes from getting in. It's super great. It's definitely not a tent. I know that's what you're thinking, but it's not. It's definitely not. It's indoors. That's what we're calling it. And yeah, it's great. It's wonderful. And no matter what we say, this thing will sleep 3 people, even though it seems like it wouldn't. You didn't say how tall or big the people were. It'll sleep 3. I'm telling you, indoors. That's what we're doing. That's what it's called. Look it up today. Indoors.com.
Awesome. So close.
Oh. Goof.
Let's get to our segment.
Right. Wait, why are you going to Puerto Rico?
For my friend Carrie's and my birthday.
Didn't you just go to Hawaii?
I did.
Are you trying to do all of the same cool stuff? Is that what you're trying to do? Just cram it all in?
Yep. This is the year of just whatever.
Year of whatever. I like that. Where are you going in Puerto Rico?
We're going to San Juan, and we're staying in a Airbnb down there just for the weekend. So we'll just probably walk around a lot and then check out some rainforest and hike a little bit.
Do you have a car?
We did not rent a car yet. I think we were going to try to just Uber. They do have Uber, so we're going to...
If you stay in San Juan, absolutely not a problem to do that. It is, like I say, the roads are challenging to drive there, but not... It's a pretty bad, aggressive driving city or area, I guess. But I was only asking because the bioluminescent bay, the one that I did, is about an hour and change from San Juan. So that's in Fajardo. And there's 3 different ones, and they're all a little bit different.
What's the bay called?
Well, the town's called Fajardo. That's the closest one to San Juan. There's a better one on Vieques, but it's the best one, one of the best ones in the world. But it was still really cool. I really enjoyed the Bio Bay and Fajardo. So take a look if you're there on the King Tide. It'll be even better. and you really should just go and get your Harry Potter on, basically. So,
do you like go in a boat or you just walk in the water?
you kayak, and you have to kayak out, and there's like 2 people per. I think they're all tandems, which is a little frustrating.
Yeah.
But we managed.
You're not my boyfriend, so it'll be fine.
Yeah. So yeah. Speaking of field stories, that was the one where the 2 guys in front of us couldn't stay straight on their kayak to save their lives. I wish I had a camera. It was so funny. And you're just like, guys, forward, not left or right. And they'd be going fine. Then boom.
That's because dudes always try to take the lead, even when they're in the front.
Yeah.
Always.
And they were trying to like muscle their way through. I'm like, you don't have to. You don't paddle harder when you're doing it wrong. You just become more wrong. You have to adjust subtly, to get back to center. And it was just, they must have done like 10 miles worth of paddling. That was pretty funny. Anyway, but still, you should go there. It would be really cool. If you can,
awesome.
If you only have a weekend, maybe not, but like, it's worth going to.
What else you got?
Oh, for Puerto Rico? Eat the food, talk to the locals, try to talk in Spanish. They call beans habichuelas instead of frijoles. That's a mistake. That's funny.
What do they call it?
Habichuelas.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, there's no way you can remember that. It's impossible. I'm just like, frijoles? And they're like, every time, like, we know you're not from here. We know what those are, but no, it's habichuelas.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't know why. I have no idea. I asked around and while I was there, last time I was there too, because I was like, I need to figure out how this happened. And they're like, oh, who knows? But I thought that was pretty funny. I don't know.
I don't know. It's kind of like, in England, trunk of your car is a boot, and here it's a trunk. Why? I don't know.
Yeah.
Just to be different.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. It's you'll have fun. You'll have to talk about what it's like when you come back. Yeah, San Juan's a good time. You can Uber on there, no problem though. Yeah,
Carrie travels a lot. I was really surprised she hadn't been there already.
Yeah, it's a very unique spot.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to it. This segment is going nowhere.
No, it isn't. You have to come back and then we'll finish it.
That could be interesting. Never done that before.
No. So Laura, tell us about Puerto Rico. How was it?
Puerto Rico was awesome. I don't think it was quite the adventure that I had anticipated, just because Carrie and I were both super busy before we went. And so we didn't make any plans in advance. So we had our Airbnb, which was perfectly located, like right in the middle of Old San Juan. And
perfect. Yeah.
They were like, well, maybe we'll get to the rainforest. Maybe we'll do the bioluminescent bay like we talked about.
Yeah.
They kind of require reservations and a driver or a rental car or something. And we were just like, okay, we're here. Which was totally fine. So it was a walking, eating weekend where we just really spent most of our time checking out San Juan and Old San Juan. But we walked, there's a whole walking sidewalk that goes the whole beach side of San Juan. And we walked pretty far along that. And then we took a Uber to the only brewery on the island I really could see was Ocean Lab. And that venue was really cool. It was like, the brewery was attached to a concert venue, which was attached to the pool side of a hotel directly on the beach. And they had to close early for a show, and it was Winger. Right. Oh, I wanted to stay so bad, but it didn't start till past my bedtime. So I was like, we're not staying.
Yeah.
It's also really expensive. Man, I don't know how people can go to concerts anymore.
Oh, I know. That is, they're astronomical in price these days.
But when you were in Puerto Rico, did you do Old San Juan?
I've been a couple of times, but I've always also, usually I've had to get out of San Juan. I haven't spent a ton of time there. I have spent time, but I've gotten to see a lot of the island. And that's actually really, really fun. It was really cool. I think Ponce is really great. I think, like I say, Fajardo and the Bay is really cool. I'm sad that you guys didn't get to do it, but
it was also, so part of our decision there too was it was a full moon, and that's really the best time to go. So we were like, let's not jump through the hoops to really, get there and then kind of be disappointed. So
yeah, and if you don't have it's like a full moon works if there's a king tide. You can still, they actually have tarps that they put over top of you, but like it has to be like perfect conditions on a full moon, and that's tough. Yeah. So we got really lucky on ours. But yeah, new moon's the best time to go. New moon on the king tide is, they say it's literally magic. So, I mean, I agree. I could say even when we went, the moon was up, but it was king tide. It was awesome.
Yeah. No, I took your advice. I looked at the tide. It was kind of like in the middle somewhere, and then full moon.
Yeah,
I was like,
it's no good. No good.
Yeah. So, informed decisions.
Right.
And really just, it was a lesson in just like, let's just go with the flow. We didn't, nothing on either one of us. Neither one of us had time to plan. We're here. Let's just enjoy what we got. And there's plenty of opportunity to eat, walk around and see stuff. And so we just did that.
Yeah. And as long as you're not driving, it's an absolutely delightful place to be.
Yes.
It's the fair thing. But I mean, San Juan is really cool. I've still gotten to enjoy some of it too, and there's a lot of expats all over the place in San Juan too. There's a lot of people all over. A very welcoming city. Very, very.
Yeah, the first couple of days it was, not too crowded. Then the cruise ship came in and it was, a whole different world.
Yeah. Yep. And then you got to find, they're all going to the same 4 bars. And yeah, it was funny. I was actually at a bar there and the bartender looked exactly like a friend of mine. So we were just having a conversation and I'm like, is this Ben? Is this, no. And he was like, while I was there, they were trying to get on a cruise line's list for cocktails. And so he had to create like 2 different cocktails for one of the cruise lines. And this woman came and sat there and took was reviewing basically his 2 cocktails that he made. And she loved the first one. And he had to make an edit to the second. And I'm like listening to this and I'm like, man, a lot is riding on this one woman's opinion on the drink. Right? It's pretty wild. It was pretty funny to see. I was like, oh, I mean, it makes sense, right? They want to know it's good before they send people there, but very funny. Just part of the business.
Oh, and I just loved that it's a cat friendly city. I was probably all kinds of environmentally wrong, but I had no idea. So we like turned this one corner and it was just like cat crossing and cats everywhere. And I don't know how many cats I probably walked by before I realized that they're everywhere.
Yeah.
But I loved it. I just wanted to sit down in a park and just chill out with cats all day.
I know. Right. Yeah. And they would let you. But yeah, it's a really great place. I'm glad you had fun.
I mean, like bring treats.
What's that?
I'm bringing treats next time.
Oh, yeah.
Like if I knew all these cats were here, I would definitely have treats in my pocket.
There you go. Oh, that's funny. But yeah.
So that's the takeaway. If you visit Old San Juan, bring some cat treats.
There we go. That's a good spot to end it. Life advice from EPR. Bring cat treats. Let's get to our interview.
Welcome back to EPR. Today we have Juan Rovalo, Senior Ecologist and Nature-Based Solutions Strategist at Jacobs on the show. Welcome, Juan.
Hi, thank you for inviting me.
Awesome. So we've had a few other guests from Jacobs on here, namely Michelle Rao and Holly Schmidt, and we're always impressed with their knowledge and the work that they do. And so we first want to start off with asking you what's entailed in your role at Jacobs.
I am a senior ecologist and I support different components of projects that have an ecological element into it. I work with different teams with the water market in California, with the landscape and design in other places of the nation. This nature-based solutions strategies piece is my mission to bring this ecological intelligence into every project that I have the opportunity to work in. I believe that it has working with nature instead of against nature. It's important. I think is the only way to go to move to the future. And it has a great power of regeneration and resilience and adaptation and well-being. And it crosses over so many areas that as society we need to improve.
Yeah.
So yeah, I work in many different projects, but all of them has this component of ecology bringing into it.
Awesome. When we were talking earlier, you said that you were, and I love your enthusiasm for the work, but also for the exact work that Jacobs is doing. And you mentioned that you really liked the direction that they were going and the types of projects that they were getting. Do you want to talk about that a little bit? Like, how long have you been with Jacobs, and are you seeing like a different direction or just sort of momentum in a certain direction that you're liking?
Yes. I think that, we are living the greatest challenge with climate change and the loss of biodiversity and many other things. probably the biggest challenge of our generation that we are living right now. And at the same time, is the biggest opportunity to do something about it and engage meaningfully. I was working before in another great company as well called Biohabitat, that they do amazing work. And I was invited to join Jacobs because the momentum of what's happening, it's also very interesting. The size of this company, the reach, the scale of projects, the type of clients, it's in a scale that I believe it's important to participate in working and improving it as best as I can, So yeah, the core of the strategy of Jacobs, there's a series of sustainability goals and a climate action and a climate response accelerator, it's called. And at the core of that is this idea that we are directly dependent on nature as a society. Probably half of the GDP is dependent on nature. And the state of these nature and ecosystems is very dire right now. We are facing the 6th extinction rate. We cannot pretend that that is not related to us. That is not related to our economy, to our health, to our potential. We cannot pretend anymore that that is happening in an environmental sphere separated from what people do, from what people depend on, not only for work, but for life. Yeah. And I believe that that is at the core of the strategy that Jacobs is leading now. We just started with a new CEO, which is fantastic. And he has been working also with this team, putting together this strategy. So many clients nowadays are asking for this kind of approach. Some clients specifically are asking this is great, engineering, design, it will function as we believe. Now, how can we enhance biodiversity? And that is something that didn't happen before. This is starting to happen more and more. And there's many different, I would say, indicators of different groups that are shifting in that direction. And that fills me with hope and enthusiasm to participate, for sure.
Great. Are there any specific projects that kind of illustrate that, or anything that you could talk about just to kind of give us some feeling for the actual work?
Yeah, one is the work, for example, that Holly talked to you guys before, with a partnership with Engineering with Nature, and the work in some Department of Defense facilities in which they are leading the way to engineering with nature. That means raising the resiliency and the readiness of that facilities through the restoration and through the intentional restoration, I would say, of the ecosystems that surround the bases or the facilities, in terms of reducing the risk of flooding or different regards, which is fantastic because the Army Corps of Engineers in the past, you wouldn't say that it's the best example of ecosystem restoration, In the past, they are heavy-footed engineers. But now this group that is emerging strongly of engineering with nature, it's actually changing that perspective and bringing amazing results. So that is one that it's fantastic that is happening. But here, for example, in California, Jacobs participated in the updating of the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan that was just adopted probably last week. And that is very important because it really touches the Central Valley. Probably is the most productive area in the US. Yeah. And it's the home of millions of people. And California is a state that has more endangered species. So a lot of things are happening on the same space. And this flood protection plan, it touches agriculture, of course, the flood protection, recreation, the protection for families and cities. But at the same time, part of the recommendations is the use of nature-based solutions. The quest to achieve multiple objective solutions, activities that actually accomplish many things at the same time. So instead of having conservation fighting against agriculture, the recommendation is, how we can make both things. And it happens that rice fields are great, provide certain features that are great for one of the very endangered species here in California, the giant garter snake. And things like that, how can we accomplish both goals? How can we have win-wins in this approach? And it's happening. People are supporting it and projects are emerging in that direction. So it's fantastic. I have also smaller projects that doesn't deal with a multi-county statewide approach. But some clients are not only looking to enhance biodiversity, but they are also asking questions like, how can we enhance biodiversity, work with native species, but at the same time manage stormwater and at the same time improve air quality? Right. How can we filter sediment to approach our processes? And, how can we provide cooling without the use of refrigerants? How can we stack functions? How can we nature support this deep integration of design and ecology? So it's fantastic to work in those projects because it's a big innovation approach in which nature is not something that you carve a little piece on the side and you say, that is nature, the rest is not. Right. That happens all the time. Yeah. So it's interesting to bring this forward and see it happen. And clients really, really trying to do it. I mean, sometimes I can imagine things that the client said, well, no, that is too far away. We are not doing that. Right. But at the same time, they're saying, but that is interesting. Let's move for that one, and it's happening. So I have worked in this approach with a client in Arizona, in California, in Washington, and now there's another one that we are working in New York, in the state of New York. So it's happening, it's happening. Yeah. It's fantastic. Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned that too, because it's kind of like, we've been talking for years about, okay, well, if you get rid of a wetland and you build something on top of it, that's where all the water goes. It's wet for a reason, right? There's a reason it's wet. And so,
right.
Building smarter, not harder. And I love the messaging there. So how does that tie into what you do, the work that you've done with the Urban Land Institute? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh, yeah. Well, we participated in the production of this report, and I happen to have it open here. It's Nature Positive and Net Zero, the ecology of real estate. So nature positive, net zero, it's a little bit more common language nowadays in the environmental consultancy and sustainability arena, right? Net zero. But nature positive is an emerging field. Mm-hmm. And the idea is that the attention to reduce carbon emissions to kind of tackle climate change is super important, is crucial that we do it as fast as possible. But we are forgetting the biodiversity piece.
Yeah.
There's not such a market yet. There are different approaches on biodiversity, but there's not like a big consensus of how we do it. And Nature Positive, the IUCN started talking about Nature Positive in the last COP27. And then the Biodiversity Convention also brought it forward. And it's starting to gain momentum, not only in the US, that locally we were able to join the world in tackling these challenges, but also in many other places of the world. The UK, for example, have this biodiversity metric that all projects need to prove that they are raising the biodiversity metric with their own project. So they have a process to evaluate the baseline. They have a process to evaluate from the baseline when the project is built, how the biodiversity will diminish. But then they need to integrate features that prove that it will raise at least 10% from the previous baseline. And that is fantastic, the biodiversity metric. It seems that it's going to be mandatory at some point in this year. And there are some clients of Jacobs that they are already asking, okay, what do we do? How does that look? Yeah. How can we do it? And the Nature Positive, the ecology of real estate, actually, this report with the Urban Land Institute make the case not only of the importance of why we need to do this, why it's important to solve this issue, but also how, or at least initially, some degree of strategy at different levels. So we talk about the portfolio level, in which a campus is being made, or a portfolio across the globe. There are some companies that have property, real estate all over the world. And those companies have a big influence of what they can do across the board. But there are some people that have companies that are concerned about their campus or the single building, or even just talk about certain materials, the material selection, the procurement, the life cycle, and different strategies. So that report pretty much uses this approach of nature positive to talk about all these issues at different scales. And it was really cool. People from the Green Print, the ULI participated in this, people from Jacobs, but also from Lend-Lease, Prologis, and other companies that manage real estate or environmental people. So it gathers the kind of the group intelligence to talk about this issue. How can we really leverage ecology and have also a business case in the real estate industry?
Yeah. And that's fascinating. That's really, really fascinating. And I was wondering, could you maybe talk about what some of those biodiversity features that companies can add? What would those be? Like an example of one.
Yeah. For example, the project that I was working with this client both in Arizona and California, we started to understanding where the project is located. Where is it sitting? Where is the property at? But instead of starting to think of the project from the fence to the inside, what I do is to, first of all, look what it's outside. Where is that project nested, right? I need to understand what is the bigger ecoregion that is nesting this site. What are the soils over there? What is the story, the ecological, big ecosystem story of that area? So I work with at least level 4 ecoregional approach. And then I dig a little bit deeper and I try to see what is happening right now outside this property and what is the history of that place. So in a project in Washington State, well, it was the floodplain of the Duwamish, and then it was transformed into agriculture, and then it was transformed into an industrial area, and then nowadays it's a parking lot, and probably it was in the past a brownfield,
Yeah.
Okay, but that means that some certain legacies are still there. Not only the recent legacy of the pollution, but also the legacy of the forests and the wetlands, and also the hydrology that the water still run through it, So I start narrowing down the understanding of what this place is, not only looking to the past, not trying to to return to that state, in certain moments it's impossible to return to that state. So there is a common critique. And it's not that the restoration is not trying to do that. And in the words of Keith Bowers, the founder of Biohabitats, what we are we're looking at the past to see what used to work over there, what were the forces and the energies that shaped that place, but not to return to that moment. We are restoring the future. We're thinking about the future and the potential of that site into the future. And thinking of that potential then, you try to integrate the project, what the project needs, but also that ecological potential into it and what functions can work with each other. So not only what kind of structure of habitat we need to have in terms of vertical structure of species on the ground, species on the understory, trees or elemental or open, or if it's more like hydric soils or wetlands, what kind of species are there. But then from there, we need to understand also what other species are in the region, use the region, and might use this little spot that we are recreating as a stepping stone, right? Sometimes the projects are, in this case, for example, in Washington, is very near to the riparian corridors,
Yeah.
So can we participate intentionally in that corridor? Can we promote connectivity? Can we create shelter, food sources, refugia to different species that we know that they are there, Not talking about the rats and the cities, and the kind of, but talking about wildlife, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes the wildlife in the urban cores are already disappeared, but sometimes the pollinators are still there. Sometimes even woodpeckers are still there or other animals, right? In the Washington area, I used to live near Seattle, in the other side towards the Kitsap Peninsula, and you could see bald eagles going around. And you could see ospreys having a nest in the towers. So there's a lot of wildlife that is surviving the encroachment that we do with our expansion. So how, and this is another phrase from this biologist called E.O. Wilson, how can we tackle this? Expansion and stewardship, they usually are perceived as opposing goals.
Yeah.
And the real key to this conundrum is how can we use this approach to nature in a way that it reshape and reinforce the other one.
Yeah.
How expansion reinforces stewardship, how stewardship reinforces expansion. That doesn't mean that we need to expand to everywhere. We need to preserve wildlife as such and give space for that. But the expansion and then it is a question of design. How can we design to do this? It's a design challenge.
Yeah.
And then we can talk with architects, with engineers, with developers, with et cetera, So it's bringing different layers of consideration into the design process. That one approach that includes all species, not only the car and the human that is associated to the car.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
But the rest of the species, and not only from the fence in, but also from the fence out.
Right.
And then it could be very interesting because some people are starting to bring into this equation not only the function of the site and the ecology of the site, but also the people of the site. Yeah. So who used to be there and who is there now? Yeah. So how can we promote interaction with the neighbors? How can we be a good neighbor? And this approach not only will bring value to the project, but also may facilitate dialogues with the neighboring community and may also facilitate dialogues with the regulatory agencies and may all that benefit the process of the project itself.
Yeah.
So
it gives like genuine ownership to the community that's involved as well.
That's right. And in some cases, it can be very direct and very intimate, Yeah.
And so it's funny, you mentioned all that. It's just, sparking all kinds of things. Like I think another aspect of this has to do with biomimicry too. So it's not even building. There's lots of other things. And you are a certified biomimicry professional from the Biomimicry Institute, which...
That is right.
You got your master's in it, which is really, really cool.
That is right.
It's using strategies in nature to solve human problems. So how on earth did you get into that? Like where, and how does that fit into what you're doing?
Well, it's a big piece of what I do. I mean, I want to say that everything that I do starts with a key question in biomimicry, which is how would nature do it?
Right.
You have this challenge, this design challenge, this function that you need to solve for. Key question is, okay, how would nature do that?
Yeah.
And it's not how would nature would design a cooling tower. It's how would nature cool, right?
Right.
It's not how would nature create a strong barrier against the seawall, against the ocean. It's how nature manages the energy of the waves.
Right.
So it's not exactly how would nature do exactly what you think you want to do, like a seawall. It's how nature manages that same challenge that you try to solve usually with a seawall.
Right. Yeah.
And then it's incredible the approach that kind of conversation triggers with architects and engineers that are a little bit open to have that discussion, because they start having much more a bigger ideation space.
Yeah.
They can see the shapes, they can see the interaction of things, they can see the value of having that, and instead of having a seawall. So the reason that I got into this is because I was living in Mexico several years ago, and as an ecologist and biologist, I was working before in laboratories. I was making basic research. That's what we do, right? We go and we study, we look things into the minute, and then probably we write a paper and present in a congress and look for the next one. But I was born in a family of designers and artists, I will say. So all the conversations and family trips, we were lucky to go to places in which my dad as an architect will explore the architecture,
Yeah.
And then carve a little bit of time for me to have some nature exposure, But then I learned a lot of this. And after being in science, in this kind of basic science and research for a while, I grew a little bit frustrated to see how little the basic science was actually preventing the destruction of our natural world.
Yeah.
Because developers don't read papers.
Right.
And sometimes in some countries, environmental regulations don't really work as well as in other places. That is the case of Mexico and many other countries, so I started doing something else, and finally me and a couple of friends founded a company in which they were designers and I was the ecologist, and we were trying to do projects together. So we started working with master planning groups, with architects, with engineers. And then I received a call from a good friend asking if I would like to participate as a local ecologist to a new thing that was a new team that was coming to Mexico to work with a university of biomimicry. And they needed a local ecologist. And the fact that I was already working with designers, it was like a big discovery, you know?
Oh, yeah.
So I joined that, and we went to this major trip in which we were bringing basically designers and business people to experience directly different ecosystems and understand some part of the, I would say, like wisdom or knowledge that is embedded in those species and in those places, right? Mm. And in Mexico, you can experience 13 ecosystems in one single day, you know, just go from the mountain to the ocean, you know, and you have, so it's fantastic. And then the 2-year certification submittals was open, and I applied and I was accepted, and I just got into it. And for me, it was already something that I was resonating deeply, this idea of multidisciplinarity between science and ecology, with design and engineering and business, you know? So after I studied biology, I studied an MBA just to understand a little bit of how the world works beyond the laboratory. And so all this combination is something that I was already experiencing biomimicry with B38, and the lead of Janine and Dana and everybody over there helped me very significantly in shaping and structuring it and understanding, oh, this is not just a crazy idea. This is a main idea that has the potential to change the world.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, it's a great thing. I use it all the time in everything I do.
And like, you know, you mentioned seawalls earlier, and like, I think that's fascinating. We're like, oh, well, we'll just build a wall and that'll be the solution. And then you start looking at what nature does. It's like, how about we just slow it down and, you know, use, you know, seagrass and and do all this. It's less expensive, and whatever it is, you know, it's a lot easier to do. You don't have to maintain it over, and just that creativity is really, really unique and really, really cool. So I'm really glad that you're seeing that in a lot of what you do.
Well, now the nature-based solutions approach promoted in the IUCN and in the kind of global arena as well, it's exactly that. You know, it's how can we work with nature instead of extracting the minerals from nature and then make a seawall that we need to repair every 5 years. It's very powerful, and I truly believe that is this approach, the evolution of this approach, is the only way forward that we have as humanity. Yeah. If we can actually align with those processes, I think that's the only way forward. Climate action, social justice, health, you know, abundance, everything, it's already there. And we cannot have the luxury of allowing it to go extinct, because there's no way that we can recreate it. You know, extinction is forever. That is not a cliche. It's real.
Yeah. It's a really great point. And I want to ask you, since you've been able to, you know, your work's taken you all over the world, which is really, really cool. So you have a really unique perspective, I think, on the way that we're, you know, tackling this challenge all over. I guess, where was the first place that you went overseas to work, and how has that influenced? How has the experience influenced you?
I couldn't say that is the first, but it was very revealing, the opportunity that I had of going and working in Bhutan, which is in the northeast of India, between India and China, right? And it was very remote area. It was the end of the road in the base of the Himalayas, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Such an amazing, amazing spot. I was subcontracted by the it's called National Gross Happiness Index Center, because Bhutan is one of the few countries that they don't have a GDP, usually gross internal product. They have a gross happiness index. So they mention not only the productivity, but mention a whole set of indicators of how people are happy or not. That implies health, education, income, access to schools, communication, it's an interesting indicator. They were building a center, and I was fortunate to being asked if I wanted to go and make a site assessment for them, because it was just in the border of a protected area, a very important protected area, and they wanted to know how to approach it. And what was very revealing to me is that even there, in this remote village in Bumtang, is a municipality over there, where the road ends,
Mm-hmm.
One of the main concerns that I discovered over there, that is nothing to be discovered, but it was a realization to me. It was that the center, it was being planned to be very close to a big river that comes down from the Himalayas. But nowadays, the big risk over there, it's called Gulf. Glacier, lake, outburst, flood.
Oh, yeah.
So you have the glaciers over there in the Himalayas that are melting. And now we have glacier lakes. But the lake has a big berm that is actually keeping the water in the lake. And it's just a trickle that creates a river, which is not a trickle. It's a big, big river. But the problem is that you have big chunks of ice and mountain aside the glacier that are also melting. So when this thing melting off and slide into the lake, they create such a wave that destroys the berm. And in one big event, all the lake can just flood the whole basin.
Yeah.
And you can imagine all the agriculture happens around the river. And the main towns are around the river. And if that happens, well, it's bringing big trees with the water, and it can be a catastrophe. So I researched a little bit more, and I talked to a Japanese scientist that studied this, and we talked for a little while. And so not only my recommendation to that project was to the kind of vegetation, how to promote the ecology, the landscape ecology and all of this, but also how to prevent and prepare for that kind of event.
Yeah.
So early warning systems, make a study of elevation, how to position structures. And my suggestion was not to be in the floodplain, right?
Yeah.
Which seems like obvious, but the main project was in the floodplain. So it's not obvious sometimes,
Right, of course.
Sometimes we love floodplains because it's flat, it's nice, it's near the river. And as you said, it will flood. Yeah.
Right.
But in this case, it's not going to flood peacefully. It's going to flood catastrophically. So that needs to be into consideration. So the very thing that it was very revealing to me is that what I was looking in urban places in Mexico or in the US, South America, it's happening everywhere, even in the very base of the Himalayas. Bhutan has almost 60% of the whole territory is preserved area. It's conservation area. It's beautiful. And even there, all the global dynamic is happening in a way that we need to be responding to it. We need to talk about adaptation and resilience, even in remote areas like that. So for me, that was very, very revealing. And I realized that adaptation and resilience needs to be in the core of everything that we do.
Yeah.
Everything that we produce and everything that we think about as humans should be going in that direction. I think that we should have started like 50 years ago, at least,
Right.
And we are still kind of saying, but it's such an uncomfortable topic. Let's leave it for later. It's like, no, there's no later. We need to make it happen now. And I'm not naive. Things need to keep on. We need jobs. We need income. We need health. We need education. We need everything that we are doing. But we need to direct it in this direction. And I'm convinced with that. And probably that, the other one was working in Morocco. And this project was a big, big, big thing. And we have the opportunity to talk to people. And it was very interesting because they told us, don't tell me that we are doing things wrong. We already know. You don't need to come here and point fingers and try to create some guilt, We already know. Don't tell me that. Tell me how to do it right. Yeah. That's what I want to know.
Right.
And it's like, okay, that is fantastic. I wish everybody had that kind of perspective,
Yeah. And perspective is really important. I think a lot of times, instead of seeing it as a fight, is, seeing it as a coming together. It's not, you're doing this wrong. It's how can we do this smarter for everyone? And you can even say words like save money. And they go, wait, we can do this and save money. That's a thing that can happen. You're like, yes,
exactly.
Do it this way. So,
yeah, now I'm paying attention. Yeah, let's talk about it because it's possible. I mean, this attitude of win-win. The thing is that we have very much ingrained two ideas that we need to really work against them. One idea is that we can control nature.
Right.
We are here to tame this thing, And we are already understanding that that is not the correct approach. We are not here to tame anything. What we need to do is to be here to adapt and integrate to it, So that is one idea. And the other idea is that I need to win, and for that, you need to lose.
Right.
And that's no other way around it. And we need to find win-win situations,
Yeah.
For everybody. Yeah. Including the non-human creatures that sustain the life of this planet.
Oh, 100%. And we sometimes forget how connected we all are. But, even it's a difficult concept, right? Sometimes to grasp, because you're like, well, when there's biodiversity, there's less disease, and we can walk through that process, but it's going to take really long and you're going to get really bored. So just, you know what I mean? Like there's a really big disconnect here sometimes. But
it's hard to understand a complex system for sure. But the core idea in my mind is that this biodiversity that we are talking about, this saving the species narrative, is because that biodiversity is a sustaining foundation of everything else that we consider living.
Yeah.
And the air and the water and all these common ecosystem services that we talk about. If we don't have biodiversity, we don't have those, Yeah. If we don't have bats, just to say an example, if we don't have a healthy community of bats in southern Texas, all the orchards and all the agriculture, it will be consumed by pests.
Yeah.
That bat help prevent. The connections are very direct sometimes, but the costs are also perceived as direct, and nobody wants to participate in that. But the win-win situation is what we need to aim for. When I come to a project, I need to understand how can I bring value to the client, right?
Yeah.
How can my client achieve their goals integrating this perspective?
100%.
How can I reduce risk, reduce cost? How can I position the branding? How can I create a narrative? How can I approach the regulations? How can I support that in a win-win situation?
Yeah, and I think it's a great point. And I know we're getting close to the end of our time here, which really stinks because I could keep talking about this forever.
As you can see, me too.
But, before we let you go, I want to ask, we do a segment on the show called Field Notes, where we ask our guests to talk about memorable moments they've had in the field. And we're also encouraging our listeners to share those stories with us with #FieldNotes so that we can read them on a future episode. But if I had to give you just a story to close us out with about you being in the field, whether it's dangerous or funny, whatever it is, can you give me
man, I have so many of those.
I know it's unfair. I know.
I have so many of those, which is fantastic because we can get to laugh in the field and say, "Whoa, that was close."
Yeah.
Probably one of them. I was doing a work in Belize, and I was leading this amazing team of different disciplines of scientists, and there were ornithologists and mastozoologists and marine biologists and this place, it was relatively remote. We needed to camp over there, and we will camp for 1 week or sometimes 2 weeks in a place where water needed to come or capture from the rain. And so it was quite intense after 2 weeks of not taking a proper shower. And cooking in a. I mean, it was a condition, right? It was a remote place, and it was full of crabs. It was full of blue crabs, but full means that sometimes you will have dinner, and then with your headlamp, you will turn around and you will see thousands of crabs.
Whoa.
Literally thousands of crabs just waiting for you to drop something of what you were eating,
Oh, gosh.
And one day, some of my friends and these guys, one of them, it was exhausted, and he just lay down in a mat and fall asleep.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of kept going. I mean, we were doing also bat and bird monitoring, so they were using some nets to capture and release and all this.
Yeah.
And we kind of forgot. We will be working late in night and very early in the morning. And this guy waked up because the crabs were coming to him to see if he was dead and he was edible already, and they were pinching just to say like, okay, can I eat this already or not? Because crabs are omnivorous, they will eat everything.
Yeah.
So they were coming to him just saying, okay, is he ripe? No, but he was surrounded by thousands of crabs, and he was like, oh my God. He started shouting and running, and then all the crabs, of course, run away. And and we were just laughing so hard, But yeah, if you don't pay attention, the crabs will take you. Yeah, it was really fun. Yeah, it was a great
life lesson right there. If you don't pay attention, the crabs will take you.
That's right. Yeah, it was fun.
Man.
But I mean, working in the field is fantastic. And I said before, it's also dangerous. I mean, working in the field, I have friends with all kind of experiences of tropical diseases, and I won't gross you out, but there's a lot of things over there, Yeah.
That's EPR After Dark. We'll do a different.
There you go.
More stories. Yeah.
Well, it's a pleasure to talk to you guys, and thank you very much for inviting me. Yeah.
Of course. And before we let you go, is there anything else you'd like to talk about? Anything else you'd like to leave us with?
Well, the only thing that I would say is that as a group of people that are concerned of the environment and where we are in that regard right now, I think that it's very important to take to heart that we are the ones that we are waiting for to arrive and do something about it.
Right.
There's no hero coming from anywhere else.
Exactly.
This is what we have,
Yeah.
And good, bad, limited. I mean, we are limited, but it's us. It's all of us. And we really need to step up and say, every time we have the opportunity to be as keen, as smart, and as possible to say, can I say something? Right. Can we consider this other direction because of this? We need to do our homework and really step up. And you guys are doing it through this vehicle, which is fantastic. But that's my thing. Everybody should be doing something about it,
100%. And it's a great message to leave on. And in case people want to get in touch with you and ask you anything about that, where can they reach you? I
am in LinkedIn. You can reach me through there. And also in over there is my Jacobs email as well, juan.rovalo@jacobs.com. We will be more than happy to talk about opportunities and possibilities and doing things together. That's what keep me up in the morning every day,
right.
And at night sometimes. And that's what we do. So thank you very much again, and keep on doing this work. Thank you.
Thank you, Juan.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Nic.
That's our show. Thank you, Juan, for joining us today. Please be sure to check us out each and every Friday. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. Bye.
See you, everybody.